It's day 2 of a special summer session in Springfield, and legislators' actions could have a big impact on Chicago. Amanda Vinicky joins us now with more. Amanda.
Yeah, Brandis, politicians pulled the plug, if you will, on that big energy legislation, but they did muster the energy to move forward on a controversial proposal, creating an elected Board of Education to govern Chicago public schools.
What this is a down payment on democracy. This is a practical, common sense bill. This is not revolution, this is reform. We know about the sordid past of the school district that I am a product of. We know about the history from Willis wagons to the mass closings of 50 schools, which I think would give anybody in this chamber pause if that happened in their community.
That CPS elected school board measure passed the House just about a half an hour ago by a vote of 70 to 41. Now, it isn't law yet. Governor J.B. Pritzker will need to sign it in order for that to be the case, but he has in the past indicated that he's in favor of an elected school board, and he's not bound to go back on his word on this one. Now, CPS will, when this becomes law, get that elected board in place by 2027. Then leading up to it, it would be a hybrid board. So some members elected, others appointed by the mayor, but also have to go through city council confirmation. The proposal also says no more school closures until that elected board can be seated. Now, this House vote came despite legislators who say they favor the concept of an elected board, saying that this particular plan wasn't ready for prime time. Also, and this is a big defeat for Mayor Lori Lightfoot because it came despite another last-minute push from Lori Lightfoot to try to kill the bill with her handpicked president of the CPS Board of Education, former state senator Miguel Del Valle, telling lawmakers at a hearing this morning that he's, yes, long advocated for an elected school board, but not this one because he says a 21-member board is simply too big. Now, the sponsor, State Representative Delia Ramirez, would not commit to downsizing it, but she did say, yes, she's going to continue to work on this plan, including other criticisms like putting campaign finance limits on races for school board seats, and paving the path for CPS parents who are undocumented to be able to have a seat on the board. Del Valle was skeptical.
I don't hold out much hope that the undocumented parents, when all is said and done, will be able to vote for an elected school board. I just don't see any indication that that is going to happen.
In order to get this done, a bit different for the first time in the Illinois House, legislators cast their votes on this measure, well, some of them from home. The House today adjusting its rules, allowing lawmakers to vote remotely on bills. It didn't go great at first. There were technical hiccups as they got started.
Representative Crespo.
Those things did get cleared up soon after. Now, remote voting would have once been unthought of, but of course, COVID pandemic changed that. The state Senate has allowed this all session long, but Republicans in the House were fired up. They say, after all, this change, which by the way is just temporary, wasn't made back when COVID cases were soaring. It came today when all of Illinois is back open and resuming business, at least pretty close to usual.
This change for remote voting has nothing to do with COVID. This change has to do with the fact that they need 71 votes to correct the budget error that they themselves caused by introducing a 3,000-page budget 10 minutes to midnight on May 31st. They need 71 votes to be able to correct that today. They couldn't get 71 people to show up.
Now, here is what Representative Tom Demmer there is talking about. Illinois needs to have a budget in place before next month, but that $43 billion spending plan that Democrats approved last month over GOP objections, well, a big mistake was discovered in it, a mistake that would have kept big chunks of the budget from not taking effect until next summer, as in July of 2022. So Governor J.B. Pritzker used his amendatory veto powers yesterday to make a switch in the dates. Democrats then needed 71 votes today to be able to accept those changes and then making the budget become law. But not enough Democrats could make it to the Capitol for this special session. Hence, they changed the rules. Republican Representative Mike Marin says that something as important as the budget, having been riddled with errors, shows why it's problematic that you have 3,000-page bills passing in the wee hours of the night with little room for public or even legislative scrutiny.
This is the worst kind of process. I won't even call it a democratic process because it doesn't deserve that title. I was appalled after being in county government, seeing how business was conducted in Springfield. My shock has now turned to shame.
Now, Republicans also say that if Pritzker was going to use his veto pen to make any changes to the spending plan, he should have used it to do things like nixing legislative pay raises that are contained in the budget. They're due to get about $2,000 extra a year. Governor Pritzker was asked about that today in Springfield.
This was first of all, a Scrivener's error that we're correcting at the request of the General Assembly. So that's what that amendatory veto was about. Renegotiating, changing substantive portions of the bill was not something that anyone was planning to do. This is just fixing the effective dates.
Now, this remote voting didn't just get Illinois a budget and the CPS elected school board. Also, legislators sending to Pritzker a bill that will mandate background checks for all gun sales. The measure also gives people the option to share their fingerprints with the state if they want to speed up getting a firearm owner's identification card. That is the license required for anyone in Illinois to own a gun.
I believe this will save lives in Illinois. I believe it'll ensure the constitutionality of our FOID system, and it'll move us forward in making sure that universal background checks take place on all gun sales in Illinois.
Now, this is also Illinois' long delayed reaction to a 2019 mass shooting in Aurora. In that case, shooter killed 5 people. His FOID card had been revoked, but law enforcement never actually took the guns from him. State Representative Keith Wheeler went to school with the father of one of the victims, NIU student Taylor Rayner, who was just starting his internship at the Aurora manufacturing plant where the shooting took place.
This bill gives law enforcement the actual chance, the necessary tools to prevent another tragedy from happening to another Illinois family like the Wayners. We have to give that chance.
It is going to be a busy summer for Governor Pritzker as he acts on these and all of the other bills that the legislature has sent his way. Meanwhile, negotiations on that monster energy bill, they are still ongoing. And if they get a deal, we could see legislators returning to Springfield yet again this summer. If not, they're back in their districts until fall. Brandis, back to you.
Amanda, thank you. We'll see you later on for Spotlight.